Well, it happened. Pluto entered Aquarius. Hooray! But I'm not going to be talking about that. Every other astrologer in the universe has been focusing on Pluto entering Aquarius. I'd like to focus on something more basic, and that is the anatomy of an astrology chart. And I'm going to give you the bare bones orientation as to what the various parts of a chart mean and give you the building blocks on how to begin to explore one. And I'm going to do that for you right now. But before I forget, if you haven't already, please head over to BlueRidgeAstrology.com. On the main page, you can download for free the lunar lookup table, which I'm going to be referencing in future videos. It'll help you navigate your moods, emotions, and a bunch of other things that I'm going to be getting into. But let's focus on today's task at hand, and that is, how do you read a basic astrology chart? Oftentimes I'll put a chart in front of someone and they scratch their head and totally get confused and overwhelmed because they see a bunch of lines and squiggles and glyphs. I'm going to demystify that for you, and we're going to jump down into the chart of famous musician Billy Joel as an example to kick things off. So let's dive down into his chart. I'm still here, lower left. So this is Billy Joel's birth chart. Now, when you look at this, if you've never looked at a chart before, that's okay, because in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to help you get a general idea of what you're looking at and at least become familiar with the basic components in a chart. This is where people generally get a little overwhelmed. They see a whole bunch of lines in the center of the chart. They see all these little glyphs on the outside. What are these gizmos going around the outside of the wheel? It looks very confusing if you've never experienced reading a chart before, but I'm going to give you some basic orientation, and we're going to do that right now. So we're going to start simple, and we're going to add to it. Here's a chart with nothing on it. It's important to realize what we're looking at here, and this is used as a map of the sky. And this map of the sky tells us where all the planetary bodies were positioned at the time of your birth, or in this case, as we'll see, Billy Joel's birth. But I need to give you some structure as far as orienting yourself to what we're looking at here in the chart and what the various directions mean. This direction is east. I know it's counterintuitive. I'll explain why in later videos, but for now, just ride with me here. This side of the chart is west. This is a horizon line, meaning planets will be above and below the horizon line at different times of the day, depending on when someone was born. The top part of the chart here is actually looking south, and the bottom part is north. Now, let me help you briefly conceptualize how these directions come into play. Imagine we have a big ball of pizza dough that is round. Well, that represents our solar system, because the sun is at the center and all the planets are rotating around it. But we can't show you on paper a three-dimensional round ball. So what do? It gets smashed down to a two-dimensional image, which is why we have these placements of north, south, east, and west in this chart to give us some direction. Stay with me. This will become more clear as we go. So let's break this down a little further. In the east is where we have the sunrise. That means the sun, as well as other planets, will rise up from the east, cross over the chart, descend in the west, and then travel underneath us, underneath the earth, and then that process repeats. Of course, that's going to be varied based on what planets we're talking about and the speed and what have you, but that gives us some indication as to the planetary path. Rise in the east, set in the west, rinse and repeat. Up here is referred to as daytime because the sun is generally out and it is showing us the light of day, if you will. At the bottom, or the north side of the chart, this is where night occurs. The sun is still there, as you know, but we can't see it because of the current Earth's orbit. Now, if we look at this chart, There isn't much to it, but I did add some very simple things along the outside of the chart. These are the signs that you are probably familiar with, starting with Aries. Then we have Taurus, Gemini, goes all the way around the whole zodiac. Well, what does that mean? Where do these come from? These are just 12 sections of the sky that have been divided in 30-degree increments. Each slice of this pie is roughly 30 degrees. I know they're not 100% even in this example. There's a reason for that, but I don't want to derail us. But for now, focus on the fact that each sign occupies 30 degrees. When we add 30 degrees, or I should say multiply times 12, we end up with 360 degrees, which is a circle. Your sun sign, which you're probably familiar with, is determined based on which section of this pie the sun was in at the moment that you were born. Now, I've got this wheel set up to show the natural zodiac. In other words, the zodiac repeats itself every March, starting with Aries, and it moves around the wheel throughout the next 365 days. Depending on when you were born, you probably won't have Aries at this point in your chart. You'll have something else, and that's because things are always in motion. But just to make it simple, again, you have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. It goes all the way around here, and we'll get into planetary and sign definitions down the road. All right. A term that you might often hear referenced in astrology is, what is your ascendant, or what is your rising sign? Well, that's simply this part right here of the horizon line, and it shows us which sign was on your horizon at the moment that you were birthed, aka the rising sign. Well, you also have a descendant, and it shows us what sign was on the horizon descending at the time of your birth. Two other terms that you've probably heard if you've looked around astrology even for a little bit. The midheaven, that's simply referring to the top of the chart. Certain things are associated with the midheaven that I'm not going to get into now, but that's all it is. It sounds very mystical and mysterious, but midheaven is the top of the chart. And then you also have the nadir or nadir. There's different ways to pronounce it. That's the bottom of the chart. That's it. Now, a couple other things to mention. You'll notice there's some numbers here starting with 0. This is 0 Aries, the start of the official zodiac. And you'll see as we move around the wheel, there'll be different numeric indicators showing you the exact degree placements of the sign on the wheel. Stick with me. These arrows that are now showing up are pointing to what are referred to as house cusps. Well, what's a house cusp? I guess I got to answer the question, well, what's a house to begin with? Houses in astrology are these 12 sections of the slice of pie that you see here. Each arrow that I've indicated in the graphic is pointing to the house cusp. It's the beginning of a house. And houses, at least according to traditional astrology, Western astrology, medieval, a lot of forms of astrology, they reference different departments of life. Some of them relate to who we are as a person and what we have as an individual, and family situations, career situations, how we interact with the world. Whole nother video on that is coming down the road. Every one of us has all 12 signs of the zodiac in our chart. Most of us are familiar with our birth sign only. I'm a Capricorn, or I'm a Virgo, or whatever the case might be. But all 12 signs are in here. What makes us different as individuals is A, where they're placed on our own chart, but more importantly, what planets are occupying or aspecting different houses. So if we go back to Billy Joel's chart, we can already begin to demystify what we're looking at here. Here is Billy Joel's ascendant. His rising sign is Cancer. The top of his chart, the midheaven, he has Pisces at the top of the chart. His descendant is Capricorn. And the nadir, the base, the bottom of the chart, he is a Virgo. So you can begin to see that when we look at applying the zodiac signs to the chart, it's already much simpler to read. Now, all these lines in the center are what tend to send people into mental confusion and overdrive. These are aspects which we'll talk about, but don't let this get in the way of you understanding what we're looking at. So let this sink in a little bit. Go back and rewatch it. Ask questions if you have them, and I'll be happy to answer them. In future videos, I'm going to be taking this much further, but I find that it's best to give you this information in small, bite-sized chunks so that it's easy for you to understand. And we will proceed at exploring the basic anatomy of a chart in the next video. I'm Michael Sprimuli with Blue Ridge Astrology. You can learn more about what I do, the type of readings that I provide, and other services at blueridgeastrology.com. If I've earned your subscription, click the bell, the subscribe button. You know what to do. And of course, if you have any questions, ask them in the comments. That's enough. I'll talk with you soon. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.